Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this the full council meeting for our order of business on the 28th of February 2024. So I'm going to read out the emergency procedures before we go any further. In case of emergency, there are no planned fire drills during this meeting. If you hear the fire alarm sound, please do treat it as a real emergency and evacuate the building via the nearest safe escape route. The nearest escape route is via the stairs to your left as you leave the council chamber or public gallery. Exit via the door at the back of the building and walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is opposite the police station. The lifts cannot be used in the event of emergency. Please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it is safe to do so by a member of staff. I would like to advise both members of the public and press this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live. Mobile phones should be switched off unless they are being used for the meeting. Please only speak when I ask you to do so and speak clearly into the microphone. Apologies. Do I have any apologies from everyone? Looks like everybody's here. Full house. Well done. Bingo. We're going to move to the agenda with item 1 to approve the minutes of the full council meeting held on the 17th of January. Got the minutes? Is that okay? No? Is there an echo? Yeah. Are we able to rectify that? The feedback. Do you know, Simon, if we'll be able to sort that? Yeah, okay. I'm going to sign the minutes. Sorry, I'm just going ahead with it. Seconder for the minutes, please. Or is there any, you got any issues with the minutes? I haven't seen any hands go up. Does anyone second them? Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Okay, item 2, the declarations of interest. Has anyone got anything to declare? Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to say there's a contract in which my company has an interest in, and as mentioned in the budget papers, having discussed this with the Deputy Monitoring Officer, declare this interest. However, it shouldn't require me to leave the room as it's too remote and it's already been let, and therefore they'll take part in the debate and the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Anybody else? No? Let's go on to item 3, public questions. Welcome to all those in the gallery. I'm going to read out the questions that we've had submitted in advance first. We have a couple of written questions. These questions will be given a written response, but I will read out the question first. The first question is from Mr. B. Hardy on behalf of the Youth Council, and this is to the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education and Corporate Functions. And he asks, what is the Isle of Wight Council doing to help the LGBTQ+ youth groups support young people on the island? And I've got a response. Can I read that response out? Or would you
I'll read it if you
prefer. You're happy to read it, Councillor Bacon? Thank you very much.
As you say, this will be sent to Mr. Hardy, but the response is the Council is committed to supporting all children and young people on the island, including those who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning or unsure of their sexuality or gender identity. An example of this is the provision of funding to a youth charity called Breakout Youth to deliver sessions for children and young people. These sessions are delivered from family hubs and family centres and support children and young people with matters around LGBT We have also funded another organisation called Rainbow Island to extend the work that Breakout Youth offer. The sessions delivered by Rainbow Island are to support families to support LGBTQ+ issues and concerns. Rainbow Island are one of many community capacity providers on the island. As a council, we will continue to support these and other organisations to deliver the good work that they do.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon. The second written question I have is from Mr. I. Giddings to the Cabinet Member for Planning and Coastal Protection and Flooding. And he asks that the overflowing of the brook that runs alongside the footpath from Brook Road entering a culvert just before Collingwood Road in Shanklin. And his question is, since October last year, this brook has been very regularly burst its banks during periods of heavy rain and overflowed onto the footpath and into adjacent properties, causing flooding and other issues. My own rough calculation is that this has happened for 25% of the time since that date. It appears to be common knowledge that this is due to a partial blockage further along the culvert. Brook and culvert are the council's responsibility.
They have a responsibility to ensure that any obstructions are removed under Section 23 of the Land Drainage Act 1991. The owner has been made aware of the flooding issues upstream and the concern for the welfare of people living along the watercourse, as it doesn't have the ability to flow and discharge as expected. The landowner has assured the council that they would resolve the issue in a timely manner. Our drainage and flood risk manager met the landowner and a contractor on site on the 22nd of February and will be working with them to ensure the necessary repairs are made. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. On to the questions from the public this evening that are here in the gallery. So welcome to you all in the gallery. And the first question is from Rebecca Blatchford. Would you come forward with your question, please, Rebecca? You know how to use the buttons, yeah.
Hello, thank you for hearing my question. The Isle of Wight Council is one of over 30 authorities that has, on the face of things, accepted Department of Education safety valve money. For those that don't know, the money wipes out a historical spend overspend, with the proviso that going forward, the local authority agrees to maintain its spending on provision moving forward. Are you aware that when a placement breaks down and a child cannot attend, often because of traumatic experience or an EHCP load or has specifically enough to be followed, that the school or academy still receive all of the money for the provision they are not providing? In our case, tier 1, 2 and 3 funding for the last year amounting to and I'm just taking an estimated guess, £19,000 for my child alone. Because of this, the school is not impacted by the child not being able to attend and are no rush to help sort out problems. Often ones that they are responsible for, but no one is holding account. I can find no evidence that this money or provision is audited. The money not used is not clawed back because the money seems to be going through a provision that is already ticking a box and not on a new plan that attracts legal timeframes. Or the school is in effect being paid for a job it isn't doing, and children and families on the island are not there in time. Seemingly no interest is given by the SEND team to out. I believe this is because they are not personally accountable in the local authority are. Cutting plans to support some of the island's most vulnerable children while not actually auditing the service and the money you are providing seems to me like a mismanagement of public funds, especially when we are cutting budgets moving forward. How do you intend to tackle this? And would you be willing to meet with me and other parents in the same position to discuss this further? Thank you.
The Bacon, are you able to respond to that question, please?
Yes, it's a long and complex question. I should say, firstly, I'm very happy to meet with you and to discuss the issue. I think I can indicate that this is actually a question that's been raised with me as ward member in the last few days. It's school funding and this area are very complex and technical issues. I'm also aware that from what you say that there's a personal element here. So I think given that and given the complexity of matters, meeting but in the first place providing a written answer to your question, which I hope has been sufficiently noted, would be appropriate. Perhaps just more widely, though, I'd say the ability of schools to handle and support SEN is a key issue at the moment, and it is part of the new developing plan to improve the quality of education provision on the island. As I say, SEN is going to be a key factor that's looked at as part of that, and indeed will be part of a public debate that is to commence shortly. So I'm sort of giving a holding reply because I think there's a lot in there, but as I say, I will do my best to sort out a written answer for you, but please let us meet and discuss this in more detail.
I'd value that, thank you.
Thank you. The next question from the gallery, I've got Councillor Parks from Shanklin.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Well, it's kind of my usual kind of question, really. Transport, travel and access, both to and from the island and also across the island. During the past 1 to 2 years, it seems to be going from bad to worse under this council. Cancelled ferries, as we know, fast cats, red jets, trains not connecting, landslips, we know, Vent has problems, island roads with roadworks, diversions, roads closed, but no seeming work going on at the moment. My question is simply, why is this? Is this council obviously fully aware, most respectfully, and what are this council doing about this as a matter of urgency? Because the island economy now is being strangulated. People cannot get to work to and from the mainland, apart from the NHS and other factors. I'm sure many of you councillors know. So I just want, can you please give us the very latest update on this serious matter for the island?
Councillor Jordan, would you be able to respond?
But I will. It's Stephen. Hello, welcome. There's a lot of things in there, and some of the things are within our control, and some are not. So, as you're probably well aware, the ferries are a little beyond our reach in terms of what we can ask them to do. That said, we have tried and continue to try. I myself have had letters asked of the minister in the House of Lords, and on every occasion, 2 occasions, that is by myself, and I understand that our MP has equally asked these questions. We've been refused regulation. Councillor Love this week sent a letter to the minister on the same matter, asking for regulation. The government have been not forthcoming with their approach to regulation of ferries. And as you know, they're private companies and they operate on a commercial basis. So the powers of this authority and this council are fairly limited. I do remember some years ago when scrutiny committee managed to get both companies in here on the same night. They wouldn't be in the room at the same time, I guess for commercial sensitivity reasons, but nonetheless, they were here and their activities were scrutinised by this council. And that was probably 7 years ago. And those 7 years later, we still have the same service level. So on that, I can't really offer you much comfort, Stephen. On flooding, well, flooding is a complicated issue. Some of it relates to the council, to gully cleaning by island roads, and some relates to the Environment Agency, who are responsible for our coasts and our rivers, to help us with that. I've forgotten the others. There were so many in there. Island roads got mentioned, Stephen. What else was it?
Well, it's just, no, you've answered. I didn't actually say flooding, but I think you meant landslips and Ventnor, but
Landslips are a big problem, Stephen. Very big problem. They're becoming more of a problem. It's the portfolio of Councillor Fuller. We're working hard to find solutions, but look, these are extreme weather events that have impacted our coastline. Some of our communities are in danger. We work with the Environment Agency, and as a council where it impacts our highways, we are doing our best to ensure that the routes are kept open where it is safe to do so.
appreciate your answer. Can I just ask a brief follow-up, very brief? I don't want to, I didn't actually ask about flooding, but nonetheless, your answer is interesting. I know there's a meeting in Ventnor, St Catherine's Church, 7 p.m. I think tomorrow, for an update. But my follow-up
Councillor
question.
Potts, you are allowed one supplementary
Yeah,
question.
this is it coming right now, which is, you mentioned the private ferry companies. Is it about time that we all admit and own up they no longer serve the best interest of the island, both economically, socially, commercially? Should we be looking at another business model for ferries and transport across Solent?
I hope, Stephen, you're not inferring a bridge, are you, as an alternative method across the Solent?
No.
So that's a little,
No,
little more controversial.
I'm asking
Stephen.
if we agree that the current ferry service is not really fit for purpose for either island residents who are working on the south coast or mainland, Portsmouth, Southampton, socially, NHS, or when you're talking of expanding our tourism, this is no way to run a ferry service. So if I said anything, I never say about a bridge, I might say about a tunnel, but that's another debate for another day. But I'm talking about the ferry companies now.
Thank you, Councillor Parks. I think we've understand that you're quite passionate about the ferry situation.
Well, if people were kept waiting 5 hours to get home on a Saturday night, and councillors here can't travel to and from meetings, by service.
We all appreciate the difficulties that people have had, and I think we would like to see some
We
improvement in
appreciate
that.
that, but can we do something about it?
I'm not sure that that we can, but we can only keep asking. So I think we were moving on unless you've had your questions.
Our MP Bob Seeley did say over 2 years ago he was going to regulate the ferry companies.
Okay.
But I don't think it's ever happened.
Well,
Unfortunately, Stephen, Bob got the same letter as I did from the minister that said we're not interested in regulating ferries. If I just say, if it's any comfort, and from your passion, I probably think it won't be, but we meet with the ferry companies monthly through the Transport Infrastructure Board, and we do convey those concerns to them in that board meeting. But ultimately, they're a commercial company running a commercial operation that may or may not serve this island, depending on your own personal views on it.
Okay, me and many others, but thank you very much. Thank you.
oh, thank you all for the questions. Moving on to, and thank you for attending in the gallery. Moving on to item 4, Chairman's official announcements. I will give a full account of the Chairman's activities at next month's meeting, but I would like to thank those that approached me regarding the Mermaid Atlantic team's achievements. we have contacted the team and invited them to attend a presentation next month, and further details will be provided once arrangements have been confirmed. As councillors will have noted, that we have a very challenging agenda tonight, and there's many items that we must get through. So I would like to keep most things as swift as possible. You will have also noted that there is a motion on notice on the agenda that relates to rescinding part of the decision that full council made at its last meeting. The decision, I totally got, oh no, to discontinue the exceptional hardship fund, as the hardship fund forms part of the local council tax support scheme, and this has to be approved by the 11th of March each year. If this motion is not heard tonight, it will not be able to come forward to have effect the next financial year. The exceptional hardship fund will cease at the end of this financial year, that being the 31st of March. In addition, it is possible that the budget proposals or amendments may be related to this very issue, and to avoid those proposals being ruled to potentially negate a previous decision of full council without following proper procedure, I wish to put forward the motion to change the order of the agenda of business tonight and take that motion to rescind part of the decision before we take the budget item. I look for a seconder for that. Thank you, Karen. And if we agree to move straight to a vote on whether to take this motion out of order due to the very particular circumstances I have set out. So is there anyone that's got any objections to that in general, or can we agree that we move that motion from the end to, move it to just straight before the budget item itself? Are we in agreement with that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, we'll take that as agreed by the whole council. Thank you. I don't know if it's why it's.
One, two, 1, 2. Try that one. Try that one.
Just checking out if it's any different with a different speaker, which I think it is. Yeah, is that better? They're blaming it on me. And it's like, I'm pretty sure I'm not doing anything different. So, okay, we'll try again with a bit less feedback. It might be easier for me to hear, so I was finding it quite difficult. Right, thank you. On to item 5 at this point, and we'll go for the leaders update. Thank you, Councillor Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. And in the same spirit, there's no point me. It's a page in our papers. I'll present it to you and happy to take questions on it. Otherwise, I'm taking up more time for the perhaps more important part of this evening, which is our budget setting.
Councillor Stewart.
It will be a quick question. Councillor Jordan, I've been here some 15 months. I've raised in a variety of settings the issue of the Kingston development and obviously the apprenticeships, which is part of your report, references, that sort of thing. I've had no response to where that is, how much we've lost on it, what is the sale value. I have no information at all. Would it be possible to ask that we do get a response with genuine information within, say, a month and a half?
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. It is to do with a proposal to construct a film studio on the site.
You're right. I apologise for not giving you more information. I wanted to keep the questions short.
And so those discussions continuing. I met with the proposers about 6 weeks ago, 4 to 6 weeks ago in Building 41 in Cowes. They have set a early target of around April for a firm proposal to take on the site. That's the current position as we understand it. I'm not sure if Councillor Jones Evans has even more up-to-date information than that, but
Yes, I'm probably best to give you a written response to that one. I've given you a written response before. There wasn't much in your specific question to update you on, but I'm more than happy to give a response if that's right, because there's some sensitivities around this, obviously, commercial sensitivities. So,
we'll get you a full written response.
but I think I think the most important thing is that it's the project's moving ahead, and it's very, very exciting for the Isle of Wight, which I'm sure everyone in this chamber wants to see happen.
Thank you, Councillor Jordan. Councillor Jones Evans. Is there any other questions for the leader? No? Okay, if there's no more questions, we can move on to item 6. Report of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance. This is the council tax premiums on second homes and empty properties proposal. And Councillor Stevens, would you like to bring this forward?
Thank you. This paper has been through both scrutiny and cabinet, and I think it's received a full backing on the recommendations as is in paragraph 2. What I would say is that it's a result of the levelling up bill that received royal assent at the back end of last year, 23, and it allows for empty properties that have been empty for over 1 year to be how can I say, qualified to actually pay more council tax. So that's up to 100%. And the other part of the paper is second home, and once again, this is also in the bill from levelling up central government, is also an additional 100% on second homes. And this runs not just for the Isle of Wight, but throughout the country. And the decision has to be taken at the local level, although central government has given this as a way out. The approximate gain on empty properties as put forward is about 88,000, and that can be picked up within the next financial year, 24-25. The second homes, 100% is valued at, don't quote me, I'll ask someone else. I think it's 4 million plus of revenue to come into the Isle of Wight Council. So you can see that it will assist us in later years. I've got the total here. It's 4,269,686. What I would say is that the staff have worked this out very well, as they normally do, as they always do, and that's allowing for a 20% take off of the grand total, and likewise the 88,860 also makes adjustments for further exemptions and losses. There are 6 options, and we're going for options 1. And by the way, there are exceptions at 3.8 as well, but I won't list them. As I say, I don't want to dwell too much on this. We've got serious business coming forward. This is serious, but as I say, this has been read 2-3 times now. What I would say is 6 options on page 29, option paragraph 10. We're doing option 1, option 2, and option 6. And what I will do is read the recommendations out now whilst I'm in full flow, and then open it up to any questions or discussion. The Cabinet recommends to full council the following: to adopt commencing the billing period starting the 1st of April 2024, a council tax premium of 100% for all long-term empty properties as defined by the amendments to the Local Government Finance Act 1992 in force on that date. To adopt commencing the billing period starting the 1st of April 2025, a council tax premium of 100% for all dwellings occupied periodically as defined by amendments to the Local Government Finance Act 1992 in force on that date, brackets second homes. And option 6, which is that the draft council tax policy for second homes, long-term empty properties and determining discounts for certain dwellings be adopted, and that the council section 151 officer delegated authority to amend the council's policy of premiums in line with secondary legislation and or statutory guidance as and when published in conjunction with the revenues and benefits managers. And that gives us a bit of future proofing on this recommendation. I'll look for a seconder.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Yeah.
Councillor Garrett, thank you. Who would like to speak? Councillor Garrett, would you like to speak first as your seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I note the paragraph within the report that says it would be remiss of this council not to take advantage of this opportunity. And in some senses, it's a rather blunt instrument, because what we'd really rather see, of course, is proper funding of local government directly, and in recognition of all the circumstances in which people plan their lives. I know I've been contacted by one person who may experience some hardship because of the implications of this policy regarding second homes. That said, sometimes in politics you find yourself between a rock and a hard place, and you have to make a decision. And so that is the reason why I'm content to second Councillor Stevens on this, and that we go to 100% on both of those, because I think the greatest good come from levying at that rate. Obviously, things would be kept under review at local and national level. So I'm sure a government of whatever complexion would want to look at that. As I'm losing my voice, I think I'll probably just take the signal to stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. I entirely support this paper. I've got a question, but in relation to the proposal, as Councillor Stevens is aware, there has been a house within my ward that has been empty, to my knowledge, for 16 years. Interestingly enough, it's now up for auction after the pressure I've placed on this authority in recent months regarding it. And I'm just concerned that despite this, how do we ensure that we get the money for empty homes if somebody is denying it is empty constantly, as the owner of this house had? Well, that's just a point in passing. There is a contradiction in the report that I think you need to clarify. On page 21 of the opening of the report, paragraph 1.5, having referred to the legislation in the previous 2 paragraphs, it says billing authorities wishing to adopt any changes arising from the legislation are required to make a council resolution confirming their requirements at least 12 months prior to the financial year. And yet the recommendation at 2.1, which is option 1, is to adopt starting the 1st of April this year, a council tax premium for all long-term empty properties. Now that, by my calculation, is not 12 months, Councillor Stevens. There's a contradiction in there, and I think the report isn't accurate on what you're putting to us so far. Can you suggest how you will address that? Thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Over the last 12 months, we have endeavoured to contact, and as you're quite right with your example within your own ward, Councillor Brodie, it's very difficult to actually make contact with some people. And through that period, notification has gone out that we will be bringing forward the action that we're bringing forward on the 1st of April this year. So that is the notification that we take forward as indeed do other councils up and down the country. We're not alone with this, and the implementation date is on the 1st of April, and we have given notification throughout the last year by our actions and indeed by through the media. The media has picked up on it in the past. So there has been forward notification of this said action. So I'm going to leave it at that. But what I would say is nobody really wants to take this forward. If central government would reorganise the local, the financial contributions and the way they assist us in performing our services locally through a national financial policy, then that would be far better than the outdated one that the local government association has been lobbying for change over a number of years. And I think that what we've got is an outdated system of financial support for local authorities. And I'm sorry, you're going to disagree with me on what I've said, but that is the way that I've been given the information through, because we have absolutely over the last 12 months been talking about, and so has everyone up and down the land, talking about taxing empty properties and making use of legislation when it came in. Thank you.
Councillor Brodie.
If I just come back to you, I think Councillor Stevens, you're entirely misunderstanding my point. It says very clearly at 1.5, billing authorities, that's us, wishing to adopt any changes arising from the legislation, that's for both empty homes and second homes, are required to make a council resolution confirming their requirements at least 12 months prior to the financial year in which the changes will come into effect. By agreeing a resolution tonight, the 12-month clock starts now. 12 months is not the 1st of April 2024. 12 months' time is at the earliest the 28th of February 2025, and therefore the financial year 1st of April 2025. There's an error in the report and it needs to be clarified. Thank you.
Can I ask for the section 151?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. I'm just going to introduce Chris Ward to clarify these points. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brodie, you're quite correct. Paragraph 1.5 should only refer to the second homes premium. It shouldn't refer to the empty and unfurnished homes, which can come into effect from the 1st of April 24. The resolutions within the report, however, are correct.
Okay, is everyone happy with that confirmation? Would those that wanted to talk still like to come in? No? No, you're fine with that. Okay. So we can move straight to the vote if there's no other comments.
Seconder, please.
Did we not have a second already? We had a seconder, Councillor Garrett. We've done that. So now it's just to the vote. So those in favour of this motion, please. Is there any against? Then we'll know the totals. And then any abstentions? Thank you. That motion is carried then. Thank you. Now we will, following the earlier vote, we will debate Councillor Lever's motion. I will let you, Councillor Lever, let you introduce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for allowing this to come forward. Members, I don't want to make a habit out of reversing decisions that this council has made. However, I am concerned that the late amendment that was accepted was in haste and didn't receive the consideration it deserved at the time. I'm also aware that some councillors may have expressed regret over that decision. Therefore, the impacts and the risks attached to the decision detailed in the motion, I would ask councillors to reconsider this specific aspect of that previous decision so that we do not cause undue stresses to a number of households around the island. I'm aware at the time members expressed concern around the what's the word? The handing out of the fund. Yeah, that's fine, but I think that would warrant a review of the distribution of the fund itself, not a discontinuation. So if members want to proceed with that, I think we can do that separately and review the process, but without discontinuing the fund itself because of its impact on a number of households. So I don't want to drag this out any further. The motion details the risks attached to it, although I would add to the second to last bullet point of the notes, as well as the suggestible alternatives. Also, the households that receive the EHF currently, they may not be entitled to some of those alternatives as well. So there are greater risks attached to this. I hope that made sense. It's quite a complicated thing, and that's why it needed the consideration it needed. So I'll leave it there, and if members have questions on this, I'll try and answer them.
We need a second of that. Councillor Love, yep. Would you like to speak on that as seconder?
Thank you. I wholly endorse this motion. Of course, on the night I made my comments, and I actually recognise Councillor Brodie's comments from that night where he then withdrew from that position. I think it's important to support the people of our island. This is the backstop. It's the ultimate backstop where people who have little or no money left whatsoever need that money in order to be able to go forward. Not to have the backstop would cause significant harms, not just to those people who need that funding, but to this council, who may then have to pick up much larger bills for the sake of a small support that is given from this council. So I'm grateful to all councillors and look for you all to support the rescinding of this and to move forward from here and to look at and review how this funding is given out moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, open up for comments. I've got Councillor Mosdale first.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for bringing this. Do appreciate it. I would just like to add one small amendment to it. And I should have stuck to my guns. So I think I was so excited that we'd actually got the 70%, 75% from the 70% I had banged on about for so long and had been, as when I was a cabinet member, fought against the rest of cabinet to try and get it back to 75%. I think in the heat of the moment, I should have stuck to my guns. And so now I'm going to propose what I should have stuck to last time, is that because this has a financial implication, that actually that we should vote for this to be referred back to council to rescind it, but to actually amend it, that it says that the decision made by full council on 17th December 2024 to discontinue the current exceptional hardship policy be rescinded and this be referred to cabinet to discuss the financial implication. It has got a financial implication. I think everybody last time was nodding their heads that we wanted to discuss it further. I do think the fund should be reinstated, but I do think it needs a cabinet decision to be made around it. That's my amendment I'd like to propose.
And get some advice from our legal representatives. Thank you.
And may ask our 151 officer to supplement it. I think the issue here is of timing. We need to set the LTCS scheme by the 11th of March. At present, there's a decision to rescind the exceptional hardship fund element of that scheme. And if you don't make the decision to rescind that, that will cease as of the 31st. In referring it back to cabinet, they won't have time to consider it before the 11th of March to set the scheme for next year.
That's one further question of the 151 officer then, just to give clarity to people within the group and within the council, that if we, I would be quite happy to vote for this to be rescinded as long as we had assurance from the section 115 officer that the rest of the budget process, that we were happy that there was the 50,000 within the budget to carry this forward. If so, then we'll be happy. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Mosfield. Yes, there is. Provision has been made within the budget for the effect of this rescission.
Thank you. So you're happy with that, not adding this motion, so the amendment to the motion. Okay. Okay, thank you. No, just double checking. I know there was a lot of discussion on the night about it going back to cabinet. We decided against that at that point, and there was that resolution that if the right amount of people were happy to take it back, then and I
Yes,
think we will have that.
I am
so-
happy as long as we keep the 75% and then we still keep that, then, well, what couldn't you be happy about?
Well, I think that's the general consensus that on the night that most people wanted the 75%. So we now have a motion on the table and it's seconded. Would anyone else like to speak on that? Who have I got? Councillor Quigley. You.
Yeah, just to serve this as a lesson to the Conservatives and the Lib Dems that making policy on the hoof often ends up with unintended consequences, because now we've scared people to death thinking they won't be able to access the Exceptional Hardship Fund, and except for Councillor Sarah Redrup. And we're now spending more time undoing something that should never have been undone and replacing it with a scheme that's not quite as it should be, and the Exceptional Hardship Fund is going to cost more because it won't be shared between all preceptors. So I think there's a very important lesson for us all in that sometimes we need to perhaps listen to experts.
Got Councillor Brading next.
I was going to second Councillor Morsdale's request. It goes back to cabinet, but having listened to the Section 151 officer, that there is money in the budget to do this, and it's not something to play politics with. It's something that affects all of our residents. And having heard what the Section 151 officer says, I will be happy to back the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Robertson.
I respectfully disagree with Councillor Quigley. This is a very good example of full council being able to cure a defect of good intentions last time. So the percentage threshold for council tax relief has gone up from 70 to 75%, and the hardship fund, I hope, will be reinstated. So it's a good example of council curing a problem from last time, and I welcome it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's taken a bit long and we took a long route round to it, but I think we've got to the right decision. But we now need to vote on this. So is there anybody else that would like to speak, or can we go to the vote on that motion? Would you like to come back on it at all, Joe?
I think I'm fine where that debate's been left, and we should just move to a vote to get things done.
Thank you. All right, all those in favour of the motion? Okay, is there anyone against? Anyone, any abstentions? No. Thank you very much. That motion is carried. Okay, we're on to item 7. This is the budget and council tax setting for 2023-2024. And I am starting with that we are going to suspend the standing orders to enable a more generous procedures outlined in the budget meeting rules in the Constitution to be applied. Apart from that, no other standing orders will be suspended. There are 3 budget amendment proposals were submitted and published, and I invite the leader to move, with no debate at this stage, all the budget proposals. Councillor Jordan.
So thank you, Chair. So I propose that we consider the Alliance budget, the amendment by Councillor Quigley and Councillor Brodie jointly, by the Lib Dems as a group, by the Conservatives and the EI group as a group, and that we take, we take those as one. We don't need a seconder for that, do we?
Yeah, we do. And now we need a seconder for that, please. Councillor Brodie, thank you. And then the leader, you can speak on this or nominate someone to speak on the cabinet budget proposal at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So as I understand it, we have 15 minutes. All of the amendments have 15 minutes. I'll try not to do that. I'm sure I can do it in less time, but I may share some of my time with Councillor Stevens, Cabinet Member for Finance, who has been central to this budget proposal from the Alliance, and worked upon for much of it with the help and addition of the Lib Dems and Councillor Quigley, and to a certain extent Councillor Brodie. The process started last September. Bear with me a few seconds while I go through some prerequisites of this, and it would be helpful to understand that Cabinet members from the outset work with the directors of this council to identify potential savings. That was the start point. So our cabinet members discussed with their portfolio, through their portfolio with the directors, any areas where savings could be made. And that is a process that was ongoing from essentially the beginning of September right through to the finalisation of the process. So from that came a list of potential savings. Some of the Conservative councillors who've been in Cabinet will have seen the now infamous document of lists that show potential savings that could be considered. And indeed, that list was constructed, and the Alliance and the Lib Dems and Councillor Brodie and Councillor Quigley saw that list, and we worked upon that list during the period from September till the budget was finalised. So they're all draft working documents. It's a draft. They're working documents. They are never complete. It was never complete because things were in, things were out, things happen, things change. We move things around. Some things were more palatable than others, and so on. It's a working document. As we all know, draft working documents are fairly confidential until they're undrafted, if that's a word. So they're privileged. They're privileged and confidential documents. And that's the same for all of the groups. So the Conservative group and the EI group, the Lib Dems and Councillor Quigley and Brodie, their working documents were not accessible by me or the Alliance. I haven't seen them. I hadn't seen them. I have no idea what the work process was that got them through to their final amendment, but it remained confidential and privileged to their groups. And that's the same for the Alliance. So let's just please make a final point that at no point in this process did I or the Cabinet or the Alliance try to prevent other councillors in this council from accessing data. Indeed, it would be impossible to do so. Councillors have certain rights to access to data, not confidential data or privileged data, but nonetheless data. It is important that we understand that this administration, I and my Cabinet, did not try to prevent any councillor from accessing the information if they had tried and did so. So the actual budget process, as we now know, was delayed. It was delayed because government were late on announcing their final funding settlement. It came late because there was a narrative that this island would receive an uplift in funding. We were quite excited on that news. We had no confirmation, but we heard that mainly through the MP that money was coming. And we'd spent the best part of a year and more, the previous leader, our officers, to convince government that this authority needed extra money. and we thought we'd evidence somewhere between 10 million and 28 million. I think we finalised on a number of about 24 million, which we believed would have equalised this authority with delivering services that other mainland authorities do. We believe that was evidence. We believe government accepted that. They, as you might expect, wouldn't confirm that they would accept that, but they certainly didn't reject it. So when we were told that there was extra money coming, we got excited. We thought perhaps we at last would made our point. But 3 million came, 3 million. Of this moment in time, no confirmation that that 3 million is going to be repeated next year. So there are assumptions on that. We hope it will be, but we haven't had confirmation that that will be the case. So it may be a one-off 3 million this year. There was extra money for adult social care, as you know. There was 500 million nationally. Our share of that was around 1.5 million, which has gone towards, I'll come to that in a moment, gone towards our contribution, the extra contribution this year to adult social care. The Alliance approached the budget in we believe, a prudent, responsible way. We've not borrowed any money since 2021, not borrowed any money. Now, that's quite important because in addition to that, some of the loan debts are finishing this year. They'll be finished, reducing our debt reducing our payoff of debts. So we're reducing our debt and we haven't added to it. That's quite important. It's quite important. It's because other authorities around the UK, some have declared Section 114 effective local authority bankruptcy, and some of those have done that because their loan debt is so high they couldn't set a legal balanced budget because the amount of money they needed to repay the loans that they borrowed over a period made it impossible for them. So this council, we've made £98 million worth of savings since 2010. 98 million. Around 700 staff have left this authority since 2010. But the underlying problem is not each annual year, and it's something that the Alliance have tried to address this year, and it's the structural deficit. It's the amount of money that's carried through each year, so that before we start, on average, we have to find £3 million. That's been about the same every year, roughly £3 million. And that's a deficit every single year. Those savings have to be made. They're a combination of cuts, price increases, and so on. But they have to be made. That can't continue because we cannot carry on starting each financial year with £3 million to find before we start trying to deliver our services in a meaningful, positive way for our island and our community. So we've had to, and we have, address the structural deficit. Now, the 3 million was paid to us. It came with some expectations on government. And indeed, with the financial settlement that came, government wrote, this is what they wrote on their financial settlement, it's out on the web, that they expect councils to raise council tax by 5%, 4.99%. They expect it. And as part of the grant funding, the additional grant funding, that was an expectation on us that we raise our council tax. Therefore, that's in our proposal. 128 of the 136 upper tier councils in this country are raising their council tax by the same, by 4.99%. Woking, Slough, Thurrock, names that resonate around some people's ears, they're increasing their council tax between 8 and 10%. And Birmingham, bless them, are increasing their council tax by 21%. So it's pretty clear that what's happening to this authority is being forced down upon us by a government and their austerity measures by cutting our funding and expecting us to raise the taxes locally. Because look, we have to understand that's the environment that we're working in. Our budget sets out proposals and a way forward to remove that structural deficit. And we're proposing financial arrangements in the budget that reduces the deficit to £1 million. Instead of £3 million every year, next year it will be 1 million. And if we address that next year, the year after, it will be 0. This council will at last be able to start setting its budget without a deficit, and its income it can spend without having to pay off their debts. That's coming. But for now, for the next year, we've reduced it to 1 million from 3 million. Another key investment we're making is into social care. We're investing that because social care is one of the reasons that the structural deficit continues. It's our biggest spend. It's 60% of the budget of this council is spent on social care. 60%, 2/3. It may be slightly more. And so what we're going to do, we're going to invest £6.3 million of extra funding into adult social care to help this position. And also we're going to add 5 million extra funding into children's social care. So we're going to spend £11.3 million into social care in an effort to remove this structural deficit so this council can get out of the stranglehold that it's been in because of the funding cuts. It's vital and crucial. Our reserves, we're going to keep at 11 million. We understand from the Section 151 officer that will be the minimum requirement that he would expect from a council this size, and we accept that and abide by that, and therefore we're keeping the reserves at 11 million. Our capital programme is going to propose 9.3 million of projects, new projects, with just 1.4 million of that funded by corporate capital resources of this council, and the balance of 7.9 million, nearly 8 million, coming from external funding. That's how we're going to fund our new capital projects next year. But we're proposing more and better things for the island and our community. First time in 13 years, this council, if this budget is accepted, will not raise parking charges. In addition, but I'll just caveat that, a small, modest increase on the visitor permits is forecasted. Other than that, no increase in parking charges. We're not increasing charges used the floating bridge. We're providing £400,000 of funding to those areas that are affected badly by the flooding. Schemes for defence and protection will be paid for out of that. We're proposing funding the work needed to Osborne Steps for my Shanklin colleagues over there, who I had a meeting with some time ago. The importance of those steps, it may sound funny in a full council chamber. They're vital to Shanklin. They're the only remaining way from the upper cliff down to the seafront. They're vital for that economy in that town and that community, apart from the lift. We've reduced the cost of the lift to try and help that, but we want to put the steps back so that people can access the seafront. We're putting aside money to do that for you. We're adding £400,000 to the rights of way. That's to improve those areas, again, especially impacted by flooding and storm weather. And we're, of course, adding 1.8 million to disabled facilities grants. That's important to ensure those disabled, those with disabilities can remain in their homes safely. I'll try and speed up, and independently. We are creating a community type fund, 200,000 in it for local community projects, plus 250,000 for business and place plan projects. We're adding £300,000 a year to coastal protection. It's so vital. We're seeing more and more depletion of our coast from storms and water and erosion. We're putting some money to try and at least fight some of the battle. We've repurposed around 1.9 million of capital, and we'll deliver homes and affordable houses with that through prudent investment, efficient, cost-neutral borrowing, and by partnerships with joint ventures and builders, developers, agents, social housing providers, and rent-to-buy schemes. The money will increase. That money could and will increase to £5 million as the capital receipts that we are aware of and know that are coming into this council will be paid, and that money too, making £5 million, will be spent entirely on housing. We need to address this housing problem, and we're putting money aside to do that. So all these things are directly aimed at helping our residents and communities. We've had that small grant. Okay, I'll leave it there.
He certainly did. Thank you, Councillor Jordan. It was 15 minutes. We'll move on to the proposal by Councillor Quigley and Councillor Brodie. So I invite Councillor Quigley or Councillor Brodie to speak on their paper.
Yeah, I'll be happy to give over some time to Councillor Brodie as well. But it's not a long amendment. It's a reflection of where the council is financially and the desperate need for housing. And it isn't a one-shot panacea, but is another route to providing homes for islanders. So essentially, it's for the Cabinet to undertake a wholesale review of council assets to release at least £1 million, which then can be used to make grants available for registered social landlords for additional housing supply in which the council receive nomination rights. So I thought you pointed to me then, Phil. Sorry, do you want me to get some water halfway through? I'll quietly stop if you do, sorry. And that allows us to leverage borrowing of 0.68 million that can be used towards the same scheme or can be used for housing, and both schemes can be used for housing whichever way the Cabinet sees fit, but essentially is to raise additional cash.
Councillor Brodie.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to add to what Councillor Quigley said, we've submitted this together as a gesture towards trying to deliver some affordable housing through this local authority. It's, you know, we'd like to have done far more than this, to be honest. We had a meeting with local RSLs to investigate the possibilities of what we could do here. But one thing that's always struck me on this council is the asset list of this council. An enormous document. Takes you hours to go through it in any detail, and you need to know the island pretty well. And I've done that on a number of occasions. I remember setting aside, when I was chair of corporate scrutiny a good few years ago, former councillor Stuart Hutchinson, I set him on it as well. And I think he used that as part of when he became the cabinet member for resources, but he didn't do really what I would have done. One of the things you'll learn when you look through that is how much the council owns, that what on earth do they hold them for? I'll give you an example. I rent a tiny bit of land at the bottom of my back garden from this council because they won't sell it to me. It's former railway land that this council owns. I have a lot of neighbours who similarly rent that. I pay £50 a year. It's nothing. And I would be more than happy to pay a reasonable amount of that. And I know many of my neighbours would. And there's a good few of us. And there are loads of examples like that around the island. It's not a ransom strip. It's not going to be used for housing or anything like that. And there are so many of these around the island. So Richard and I have set a target, you know, of £1 million or less that we can then invest with an RSL or purchase things ourselves to try and start establishing council housing. It's only a small gesture. We're only two councillors. Richard and I don't always agree about things. We both, you know, have similar political philosophies. And I have to say, Phil, that was probably the nearest to a socialist budget speech I've ever heard in this chamber. And what on earth you're not doing in the Labour Party, as I keep saying to you all the time. It's. I mean, I nearly stood up and clapped, except to cut you off, and that's dreadful. But it was the nearest. But, you know, this is just a small gesture. I used to do amendments all the time, you know, prior to 2021, much more grand things that Mr. Ward used to rubbish in his summary, etc. But, you know, it was good fun. But I don't bother now. But when Richard said, let's try and do something, and I've encouraged him to do so, I was more than happy. I hope this will be supported. when we come to all the voting at the end of it. It's not gonna make a massive difference to the housing situation, but it will establish some council housing, or at least something where we have 100% nomination rights. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. Now invite Councillor Garrett to speak on his amendment, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in speaking to the Liberal Democrat Group's amendment, first of all, on behalf of my group, I'd like to record some thanks. First of all, of course, to the Council's finance officers, Chris Ward and Kerry Hubbleday. We're always grateful for their advice and the conversations we have with them. And as always, they have provided us with great professionalism and great courtesy as well. Second, I'd like to give my thanks to Councillor Jordan and Councillor Stevens in particular. We took up your offer to engage with your administration on budget setting. You followed through on your commitments. You shared information privileged to you by virtue of full council's decision to invest Councillor PC Wilcox and then Councillor Jordan as leader of the council. You've listened to our concerns and our comments. The one thing I would, you will have heard me say, and I will continue to say, that early publication of indicative savings could be more helpful in terms of getting the sense of how acceptable they are in the wider community. But you have listened to us, and for that I thank you. You also recognise from the very start that we might still bring forward an amendment to your proposed budget, and you were content with that, and again grateful for that. And third, and not least in any way, I just personally want to record thanks to my group colleagues. You each have exceptional talents. Your knowledge and experience have been invaluable to responding throughout the budget process, up to and including drafting this amendment. It's been a joy to work with my colleagues in these last few months on this process. And I look forward to doing so for some months to come. So, when I was drafting this speech, I sort of thought back to the first time I gave a budget speech in this council. That was, I hope I've got it right, 2018. It just feels rather a long time ago now. And I noted then that the Conservative government was underfunding our public services and that local government was not escaping that. We're in Groundhog Day. That is still very much the case. And it was the case each year in between then and now. I highlighted in that speech the double whammy that we face as an island, the island factor, the extra strain it brings to our public services. At the time, it was estimated at around £6 million a year. But as Councillor Jordan indicated in his own speech, that it's now estimated at a much higher figure. Now, I acknowledge, of course, that this year there's been some extra cash. It's brought some flexibility where a few months ago there appeared to be none whatsoever. But it does not bring back those services that have been cut. There has been no back payment. Whilst we can be pleased to see this extra money, we still have to recognise that it will take many years at the current rate to repair ourselves and get ourselves back to the level of service that we would want to deliver as a council and that the residents of the Isle of Wight would expect of their council. Anyway, the preface to our amendment sets out that we broadly support the Alliance Group Administration's budget proposal, and that's because, as Councillor Jordan set out in his own speech, many investments are being made that we agree with, particularly the social care investments. The most vulnerable in our society deserve to be protected as well as we possibly can. I'm sure we would go further if we could, and if government would recognise the need to fund us correctly. We particularly welcome the targeted investment towards affordable housing. Look forward to supporting the amendment that goes towards housing from Councillors Quigley and Brodie as well. That housing is in a crisis situation on the Isle of Wight, and we must do everything we can to address that. Targeting affordable housing targets makes an essential contribution to meeting our overarching commitment, something I pressed for and everyone agreed to in the corporate plan of addressing poverty. One of the areas that we would particularly like to see explored and have set out in our narrative is something that Councillor Stewart has promoted a number of times, and that is community-led housing. It leads to housing that delivers local properties that have buy-in from their communities, that strong support, and also could lead to younger people staying in their communities and keeping those communities vibrant and healthy and active. And maybe Councillor Stewart may speak later on the effects of that. We particularly welcome the establishment of the Community Capacity and Resilience Fund. Those who were on the council when then Councillor Barry was on with me as a Liberal Democrat group will remember we put forward similar sorts of amendments under the Conservative administration. They were tiny sums compared to what you've been able to achieve in your proposals. And in delivering on that fund, we hope the administration will follow us in acknowledging that the most important priorities need to be addressed. And we believe amongst those are providing peer support for women moving on after trauma, allowing grant funding of voluntary sector work in support of mental health, and to repeat again, addressing poverty. Since joining this council, my colleague, Councillor Sarah Redrup, has pressed a case for peer support for women moving on after trauma following the closure of the White Dash Women's Centre, and I believe she'll be hoping to speak on that later. Third name check, my colleague, Councillor Lilley, is a passionate advocate of initiatives in support of people's well-being and mental health, and he's made a very strong case for the positive impact that funding grassroots projects from small grants can have on delivering on that aim. And I'm sure he will want to speak on that at some point. As I say, addressing poverty is for us an overarching commitment, and it is within the corporate plan. And addressing child poverty in particular was reinforced when the motion brought by my colleague Councillor Lee was passed in March last year. So we're very, very keen to see that motion finally delivered upon, comprehensive strategy to come forward that fulfills on that and on the corporate plan objective. Of course, if we are to further prioritise in those areas, they will need funding. And we see the Community Capacity and Resilience Fund as being the means by which that priority can be taken forward. But even at £250,000, that's not a great amount of money by the needs and requirements of these areas, particularly in addressing poverty. And that's why we propose doubling the size of the fund to £500,000. It can be achieved in the following way. It's making a further contribution from the Transformation Reserve, and by consolidating it with the funds proposed for the Place Town initiatives. I would reassure colleagues who are nervous about that final bit, and Councillor Jones-Evans has raised this with me, that there would be nothing to stop initiatives that relate to place plans that contribute to community capacity and to resilience from being able to draw on that fund. But we believe by consolidating it, it will provide greater flexibility in delivering on that fund. And I'm particularly aware on the need to deliver on things in this last year of the 4-year municipal cycle. Councillor Jordan referenced the freezing of parking charges, floating bridge charges. We welcomed that. Cost of living pressures are in all areas, and the island does depend upon those on those provisions, the floating bridge, and particularly those. Unfortunately, we are very dependent on the car for many people getting around, and parking has been is a significant cost to many people, and freezing those charges is a very welcome initiative. One area I know that Councillor Stewart has been very keen on is, and we still think should be tested further, test marketing further, is the cost of traders' permits. We believe that a market exercise that seeks to establish the proper price point for that would be useful. The customer contact centre is one of the key ways in which people engage with this council. I was very concerned, our group was very concerned to see the indicative savings in there, but I was grateful to Councillor Stevens and council officers who took me through the figures. I asked for the data, that data was provided to me on request in some detail. I'm not entirely convinced of the argument, but I've gone some way that the savings would have a fairly limited impact in terms of the rate at which calls are coming into our customer contact centre on Saturdays, when no other services really are available anyway, and in the very much the bookend points of time. But we've noted in our narrative that we would feel that we shouldn't go forward with those savings until they've been properly scrutinised openly with that data in front of everybody, taken through cabinet or whatever successor committee might be in place before that's taken forward. So I'm drawing to a conclusion. I think I've got about 5 minutes left. So, Councillor Jordan, when you became leader of the council, you invited us all in, group leaders and the unaligned members, into the room with you. There was let's say, a free and frank exchange of views all round, I would say. But as leader of the Liberal Democrat group, I committed us to engaging with your administration positively. And I said then, and I said it to the chief executive and to others, that the phrase I like to use on that is that we would engage in a spirit of distinctiveness, but not divisiveness. I hope, and there's always debating points around these sorts of things, that our amendment is not seen as divisive, but it is meant to be constructive. Even if it falls, I hope it has made you think. But above all, I hope our amendment shows that there is distinctiveness, that the Liberal Democrat group does stand for something, that we are driven by our passionate belief in liberalism as a political philosophy. And so I will end as I started my 2018 speech by quoting from the preamble to our party's constitution, because I think that summarises exactly where we come from and how we'll be looking at the next year of this municipal cycle. And that is that the Liberal Democrats exist to build and safeguard a fair, free and open society in which we seek to balance the fundamental values of liberty, equality and community, and in which no one shall be enslaved by poverty, ignorance or conformity. Now, I know those hopes and ambitions cross the political divides. They are not exclusive to any political party or no party at all, but I want to place on record, this is where we come from, this is how we seek to engage. And so distinctively, and we hope we have done so constructively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I now move to ask Councillor Jarman and or Councillor Mosdale to speak on their amendment paper and any of the other amendments. Thank you. Councillor Mosdale.
Thank you, and I will actually only be a few minutes, and then I'll pass it to Councillor Jarman. I can't guarantee that for Councillor Jarman. I just really want to say thank you to Councillor Chris Quirk and Councillor Jarman for their hard work on their budget. It has, to me, proven, having been a cabinet member, how flawed this whole process is. And why really I can't wait for, hopefully, that we will move to a committee system, that the finance section of this will be a more flowing and involved across the whole council. It always felt to me that an onerous task every year, that you'd start to do your star chambers and then you'd lay awake at night with your savings list and stuff like that as just a small cabinet, and then bring to this meeting this evening, then when we make these huge decisions that actually affect the islanders that we represent. So for me, I hope this is, I know we'll always have a budget meeting, but I hope that we move to a committee system, and this will be the last time that we run through this quite onerous process and trying to get our feelings and our emotions through on the budget process in just a few set months, when really it's something that affects us every month of the year within this council. Our amendment aims to ensure that there is better care for our looked after children by investing in a new residential care home here on the island, to build new modular housing to provide speedy homes for those currently in temporary accommodation, to accelerate the delivery of affordable homes on surplus council land, to build new solar carports over council car parks to generate renewable energy and power more electric car charging, to urgently undertake a feasibility study for the future options of maintaining the A3055 from Luckham to Freshwater, including the Military Road. New digital technical aids to improve adult social care in the community and allow residents to stay in their homes for as long as they wish to stay there. It always surprises me that we come to this point and adult social care is still expected to make 1.6% of the savings, when they're actually going to come at the end of this year, not being able to actually meet their budget. It always surprises me, and I've argued more times with Chris Ward over it, our Section 15 officer. We've had battles over it in the past, and I'm sure we will carry into the future doing so. I hope that we all work together democratically to ensure that this is prevented in the future, and that we all as a council have more innovative thinking, because the introduction of money into the adult social care is incredibly welcome, but then for 995,000 for it to claw back in savings never quite makes sense to me. However much it's explained to me, still doesn't. Anyway, I'm going to hand over to Councillor Jarman. As I say, thank you, Chris Quirk, and thank you, Councillor Jarman, for their work on our budget proposals. Councillor Jarman.
Yes, so let me start by using a few moments of my time to say happy birthday to Councillor Karen Lucioni, who sat at the back here. There you go, the worst kept secret on the island now, I'm afraid. We announced our intention to provide a full alternate budget at the end of September. And I have to say that it is our opinion that the constitutional budget process has been flouted, and that we have been denied the opportunity of submitting that alternate budget. It's very clear that our engagement this evening should not be taken as affirmation of that process in any regard. That matter is for another occasion, and we will make the best use of the opportunity this evening to approximate some of the measures we would have brought forward in our alternate budget had we been so enabled. It's useful to reflect on some of the issues that have been put forward already, and how our muting one of those, which was our intention to hold the parking charges at zero, was picked up, having an announcement being made that they would be increased, and shortly after our disclosing that fact, that measure was reversed. And I'm very pleased to see that our notice on that has been taken regard of. I don't intend this evening to dilate at length on the contents of our document. I trust all the members here have read it and studied it effectively, but it is worth picking up on a few of the points. The first one is with thanks to our colleagues in the Liberal Democrats, who, having picked up on the issue of the Saturday closing, we found a way to, in our proposal, mitigate some of that issue by keeping the saving and keeping the facility open and operational on a Saturday, because that is one of its peak busy times, and to ensure that saving continued to be met by changing the closing hours from Saturday to the times when that facility is least used. That seemed to be a very reasonable way forward. I'd also like to thank one of their members, which is Councillor Lilley, for his introduction to us of the opportunity regarding children's facilities on the island, and a trip which I made with him some time ago now, which was a catalyst to our regard for dealing with the issue of children who from this island are sent to mainland facilities at absolutely enormous cost. And the opportunity we believe is there, subject to that feasibility study that we've noted, to establish a facility on the island and to use the support of the care sector and of the charity sector, which we've discussed, to help with the costs associated with that and to bring it back. I'd also like to thank the strategic manager in adult social care for her introducing to us the opportunity to involve within adult social care a much higher element of automated remote digital technology and remote telemetry, which will mitigate some of the costs, we trust, of hands-on care being facilitated, and to provide that remote telemetry to alert people when it's necessary to visit rather than as a default. So I think we've tried to use many of the suggestions that have been brought forward to us over the last months and to deal with them very effectively. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail. There are very many of them, and in 15 minutes I could not do them justice. I just trust that the members here will have absorbed their excellent qualities and will be with us when that amendment comes up for voting. We've also tried to pick up on some of the late additions which have come in from councillors Quigley and Brodie within their measures for housing. And we've sought to embody within ours their ambitions and indeed to amplify their ambitions considerably with the large measures by using council land, additional business case justifications, which are noted in our paper, and in particular, the use of prefabricated, excellent quality relocatable facilities, which we've shared with a number of people already, which arrive on the back of a low loader, are plugged in and don't even require necessarily to have on-site facilities for sewage and electricity, because that can be generated locally. Our measure in that regard considerably amplifies other suggestions and can be brought forward, we believe, in a very short time scan indeed, to alleviate some of those problems of people being in expensive and I believe often unsatisfactory residential care in bed and breakfasts and caravans. I think that is demeaning to many people and something that needs to be changed quite quickly. And I commend our amendment to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Jarman. I now open up to the rest of the chamber to ask for comments on any of those budget proposals. So do I have anyone who'd like to speak? Councillor Sarah Breadrup.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make a comment on our amendment. You might remember that my very first full council meeting, I asked a question regarding White Dash closing, which it was the Isle of Wight's only island-based support service for women who have experienced domestic and sexual abuse. So it's unsurprising then that our amendment has a point in it about providing peer support for women who have experienced trauma. Those who have experienced domestic and sexual abuse often report high levels of isolation and loneliness. They're more likely to have poor mental and physical health, and domestic abuse has estimated an overall cost to the mental health care of 176 million per year. The impact of peer support in the community shouldn't be underestimated. Research into NHS social prescribing shows us that community-based support has a positive impact, not just on mental well-being, but also physical. Peer support is one piece of a bigger puzzle in supporting victims to move on with their lives after trauma. Every human feels the desire to be understood by others, and this is especially so for people who have experienced abuse. After the closure of White Dash last year, there is now a glaring gap in the peer support for women on the island. White Dash provided a space for women and girls to be heard and understood. Their absence leaves islanders with limited options to connect with others who have had similar lived experience to them. It's also important to note that national charities such as Rape Crisis and the Survivors Trust have no presence here. We're very lucky, though, to have a brilliant peer support service on the island called Men Only. They've only recently opened their public-facing safe place in Ryde. They're a non-clinical charity who use their own lived experience to help other men to help themselves. When people come together with a shared experience and goal, it's amazing what they can achieve. So for this reason, I was really pleased to see that the administration had budgeted 250,000 for a community capacity and resilience fund. Charities and community groups are really amazing at making a big impact on people's lives with relatively small amounts of funding. But I felt that there is a need to be explicit on what gaps there are. By making funds available through our amendment, specifically for women's peer support, I hope we can encourage something positive to rise out of the ashes of White Dash. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Redrup. Do I? Thank you. Anyone else like to speak on any of the proposals? Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. I just want to speak very briefly about the Conservative EI proposal to spend 5 million on a childcare facility and 30,000 on a feasibility study in that regard. I did send an email round to all members earlier today. I do appreciate it's a bit late and members may not have read that, but it pointed out, as was pointed out at the recent Children's Scrutiny meeting, that this work has actually already been done, feasibility looked at, and the view taken in two reports is that it is not viable to take such proposals forward. Summarising very briefly, we already have staffing issues at our existing facilities or facility. A new facility would exacerbate staffing difficulties. We have to take account of competing needs between placements and emergency provision, and the council duties in regard to emergency provision would almost certainly diminish any potential benefit that might be there to be gained. But perhaps most importantly, there are currently plans for 2 private providers to open new homes on the island. It's made clear that these will be more economic than any council provision. And indeed, one of those facilities is currently going through the registration process and has already agreed to provide all the beds that it will include for council use. As such, I'm afraid I have to say that the proposal, although attractive on its face, indeed something when I was previously member for Children's Services, I sought to advance, but found these issues at that time, and they're still there. But it also, I must say, raises a concern that, having heard about this proposal earlier this week and having some prior knowledge, it was quite easy to source those views and those concerns. And I'm surprised that they have not been sourced by those putting forward this proposal. And I'm afraid it therefore makes me concerned that there may be other elements in the proposal that are similarly unresearched and flawed as a result. As I'm afraid I must say, attractive though it sounds on the face of it, this proposal is. And for that reason, I can't support it because it would simply be a waste of money.
Thank you, Councillor Bacon. Councillor Lilley.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make certain sort of comments. Firstly, I do welcome the budget presentation by the Leader of the Council, and do actually thank him and Councillor Stevens for the in-depth of it. One area that I am very concerned about is adult social care. We rely very heavily on the independent sector providing residential beds. Without that sector being vibrant, we could be in serious trouble. If you actually had to move a vulnerable adult across the water, you're going to double the cost. Which is often in regard to children's as well. And I'm very concerned that, and I have been asking questions in my role as chair of health and social care about this issue, that is there enough provision? Because there was a meeting that many of our councillors here attended where the independent care sector said that unless they were able to get an uplift of 10%, many of them were going to close. And if those, in the last year, there's been nearly 5 closures, and we cannot afford the imbalance of that sector. So we do need to take that on board. I have been reassured by the Director for Adult Social Care and the Section 1.4 officer that there is sufficient contingency in there. But I do want to say it. There was a very good report about this issue by On the White recently, and I just want that we do need to make sure of that, and I hope that that comes to my committee. On the issue of the Community Resilience Fund in the Lib Dem amendment, I think it was important that this administration, the Alliance administration, supported the establishment of a 50,000 a year grant through public health, which went to peer support groups, went to 28 projects, and those projects have helped thousands of people. You know, counselling for men that experience prostate cancer. That project has got literally double the men on this coming forward, and actually has had a huge impact on health and that. Projects, the LGBT community that are within that. So I do argue for that we support that amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on what has been presented, but as you know, comments been made about the viability of our paper and our proposals. Everything in our proposal has been fully costed, fully thought through, and sensibly brought forward for the good of the island. When it comes talking about the feasibility of a children's home on the island, this was something that Hampshire officers and myself were looking into back in 2016. We started the piece of work as an option. Now, if there's feasibility studies done, I've not seen any of those, but to absolutely acknowledge that we pay an absolute fortune for children to be placed off the island is something the administration has never addressed. Now, the cost to us is extortionate. Some people need to be placed off the island for obvious reasons of security and the level of support that they need. But what we're proposing, we could easily reduce that bill considerably and place the children nearer to their families, the friends, and the areas that they know. So, you know, it's a sensible viability study to do. And so what we were looking at back in 2016, 2017. When you look at the savings proposals in the budget, having been directly involved in the budget for, well, 5 budgets and then indirectly now, we were always having controversial savings we had to make, sad decisions, strong decisions we had to make every year on areas to look at. It's not an easy thing to do, and I sympathise with cabinet members having to make those decisions, but make them they have to do. And I couldn't see anything controversial in the savings on the list. So those decisions, in my view, haven't been made. I'm not going into the ins and outs of data we were allowed to have because that's an issue I wasn't directly involved in. But we've come forward with some sensible proposals on the capital programme that we could access that would help islanders. And you know, I was really grateful to see in the budget actually £200,000 was put aside for Place and Town Initiative Fund. Too much money on the island is spent on Ryde and Newport. It's nice to have plans across the island now being formed to develop certain areas of the island, for the cabinet members to stand their ground and to put a pot of money in there that can be possibly dipped into by those plans. I think it's commendable, and I would not support taking that out to support a Liberal Democrat amendment. So whilst I wasn't going to speak on this, please, if people have read our paper, there are some sound capital projects in there that should be supported. Thank you.
Councillor Brodie.
Thank you, Chair. I should have said earlier, thanks to Chris Ward and Curry Hubbleday for the support they gave Councillor Quigley and I. Secondly, Councillor Jordan referred to the fact that I participated in discussions regarding the Alliance budget for a period of time. I didn't see it right through at the end because there were a number of issues that I wasn't content with. One of those is parking. I continue to feel as a Newport councillor that Newport is a cash cow for parking charges. Ryde is treated very differently to Ryde's advantage. And until that is addressed, I will never support the parking changes. But I'm looking at your budget proposal holistically, and I will be supporting it tonight. Two comments I would like to make about both of the main amendments. The one from the Liberal Democrats. I would say to Councillor Sarah Redrup, I would have preferred it if you were looking for some specific money to support women in trauma rather than loading it into this very nebulous amount of money. There is certainly, I can see Matt Thatcher in the gallery there who can tell you about funding of voluntary organisations that provide a superb service on the island in the past, and that was the Alawite Law Centre. which was hammered by this council a number of years ago and no longer exists. And the community charity that he and I are both involved in, Partner Together, is largely picking up a lot of the work that used to happen at the Law Centre. Similarly, a few years ago, the Isle of Wight Women's Refuge lost funding through the Isle of Wight Council again. And in fact, as I recall, support was then externalised to some organisation that is beyond me on the mainland, who I've never heard of again. And I think you would have been better off, Sarah, to be honest, allocating an element of this funding towards specific support for women in trauma. Because of that, I probably have some doubts about the amendment from the Liberal Democrats. In terms of the Conservative and the EI budget, oh dear. Take away the preface, take away all the narrative, and I could probably have supported it. It talks about, providing a level of housing. But to be frank, I don't need a political lecture from the Conservative Party. Have you looked at the first two paragraphs under the preface? Which is apologists for monetarist policy, which over the last 45 years since Mrs. Thatcher was first elected, has destroyed public services in this country. There's destroyed housing opportunities, etc., etc. And I mean, I'm a Keynesian through and through, that you borrow to invest at times of difficulty, not slash away the safety net, slashing away the lifeboat, which is what this has happened under the Tories for most of the last 45 years. Thank you very much.
Ready, Councillor Daw.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, 10 out of 10 for the Hollywood performance from Councillor Jordan. I think it was a very passionate delivery this evening, Phil. Thank you. Well, no, my pleasure. The BAFTA's in the post. It's great. I've been quite moved by most of it this evening, actually. Councillor Quigley and Councillor Brodie's amendment are incredibly relevant. And bringing up two little girls myself, I fully support Sarah's intent. Times are tough for everybody. Mine are only very small, like Joe's actually, same sort of age. But the social media impact, the mental health issues that have been loaded onto youngsters, never has there been a better time to engage in stuff like this early doors. When it comes to small grants, I share some experience in this line of work when I was more heavily involved in radio presentation, as I worked with a lot of youngsters, many from SEN backgrounds, and I do engage now actually on the island. I cannot emphasize how important it is that the sort of impact that these small grants have. It's absolutely vital. When working for Macmillan Charity and Mind on the mainland, I did, however, witness funding pots that were awarded as, could be regarded to vanity projects and of little benefit. Now, often these pots are quite small, but no less significant, and can, on occasion, be overlooked when it comes to oversight. It's not simply a matter for the officers to keep an eye on, it's for us as councillors to oversee as well. To ensure it's carried through correctly, there has to be monitoring with checks and balances in place. Too many times we've seen in the press that X has been awarded to Y, and to quote the late great John Bird, someone's trousered the yakkers. I'm very keen to avoid that for the future, and so seek to assurances for detailed audits, review process, key performance indicators and bits and bobs like that. Because it may be small fry in the eyes of many, it's still taxpayers' money, but I can assure you these small little pots make an absolute difference to those who get awarded them, but we have a duty to ensure that they go to the right people. So I'm hoping Councillor Garrett and the Lib Dems will be able to give me that reassurance. Your integrity is incredible, Councillor Garrett. I'm sure you will. And I mean that sincerely, absolutely genuinely. And I am going to support this amendment this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Jones-Evans.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for everyone who spoke so eloquently this evening. Just want to pick up on one item on the budget, which won't be a surprise, is the Place Plan Towns Initiative. Place-based planning and regeneration has been the cornerstone of this council's regeneration strategy since 2017, and a lot of investment has gone into that over the years. And now we have Newport, Bide, we have Cowsand, Northwood, and we have the Bay Area who now have their place plans. And these place plans are the voice of the people there. They're expensive, they take a long time, and a lot of effort and a lot of engagement by people. But you know, by Jove, when you get them, you really get a sense of place, and it's fantastic. So I'd like to thank everyone in the room who's contributed and who contributes still to delivering the place plans. In Newport last summer, we did our second survey to just check on where we were going, and that was very well received, and we seem to be on track. But of course, the elephant in the room is that these place plans don't come with budgets, and we're relying on usually the town and parish councils of the area, and maybe, you know, leaving in some funding from other bodies. So Newport and Rye were very lucky being able to use their place plans to bring in some money from Historic England, and that's been very welcome. In fact, that was we're coming to the end of that 4-year cycle now, so now we're looking at the next steps forward. So the idea behind the place plans was the budget was to enable it's a capital fund, enable projects to come forward from all the place plan areas. Well, actually, I was thinking maybe not Ryde, because I think Ryde may be okay at the moment, so I'm thinking of the other ones if that's okay. And because there's some great ideas that are coming out of them, but maybe some pots of, you know, match funding for National Lottery or for the town parish council. There's loads of potential out there, but I think it's really important that we give back our residents something from all the effort and the trust they've put in these plans. And, you know, I've got to say thank you. You know, I have sort of thanked everyone involved. I want to speak particularly to Councillor Nicholson, who called me the grandmother of the place plan the other day, which was quite sweet. Didn't quite think I was a grandmother, but never mind. But, you know, just going along and hearing what they're doing in Cowes and Northwood is fantastic, because it's about jobs, it's about health, it's about education, food security. You know, it's really fascinating stuff. So it's not light touch, but this is a light touch budget. It's just to try and build something and give something back and give. So it's really great. Thank you, Councillor Brading, for supporting that. And now I see that the conversation on the Osborne steps has been had. I'm hoping that can be deleted out of that budget amendment. That'd be really helpful, because I don't think we want to be letting down all the people that have put all their time into our place plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quigley, I'm going to come back to you at the end, because those that have done amendment proposals can come back with a 5-minute speech. So I'm going to ask Councillor Spink next. So it's anyone else on the floor that wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but Councillor Brodie's inspired me to do so. Perhaps not in a very positive, well, I don't know if you'll be smiling, because it's not necessarily in a positive way that you've inspired me to speak. But I want to say that there's not necessarily that many things which unite this chamber, but one thing that does is, I think, a genuine desire, whatever group you come from, to try and find a way to provide truly affordable housing for islanders. Now, I would ask you to seriously look at what the amendment by EI and the Conservatives seeks to achieve in that regard. And that is, I'm just going to headline it, prefabricated relocatable homes to shift homeless provision from B&Bs and caravans. That is properly costed, and certainly the initial proposal is 90 one-bedroom prefabricated housing units. That would transform people's lives. That would take them out of temporary accommodation. I'm not going to say any more about it, because in my view, it's self-evident. There's also 2-bedroom prefabricated housing proposals. The detail is there. I just want to point out the headline. There is also, in relation to affordable housing, to work with third-party organisations to deliver predominantly island affordable housing on sites built on council land.
Now, the only chance that we have of providing, I don't know why there's that noise, but the only chance that we have of providing truly affordable or social housing is on council land. And it's something that I've been banging on about for quite some time. Unfortunately, it's fallen on deaf ears. What I would ask you to do is, and I'm disappointed by Councillor Brodie's comments and rhetoric, that he would have supported the substance of this, but because it comes from the Conservative Party, he can't do so. How sad for the Isle of Wight.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? We go back to each. You are allowed to sum up at the end. Yeah, no, you have 5 minutes at the end. Councillor Stewart.
Firstly, I would like to say thank you to everybody clearly engaged with the process as well as they can, and from the position that they start from, Conservative or Councillor Brodie. However, there are a number of issues that first of all, can I say thank you very much to my colleague Gareth, put everything that I might say, but very, very short sentences, made it very clear. Housing, like Councillor Spink, like many of the people around the chamber, is desperately short on the island and has a horrible effect on so many people in terms of their social and health aspects. So I would recommend community housing and rural exceptional housing and a number of other issues, but I'm not going to push those through as an amendment. They are something that we'll be pushing through the council generally. Second thing I want to mention is I'm really pleased that something else that I brought up, which is solar panels, has been considered. I'm not quite sure why we need to spend more money on a feasibility study for that, on the grounds that Portsmouth Council will give you the information for free, and it will involve private companies, and I think we can private companies who might do that and might just actually pay for it anyway and start funding some of the projects that we might like to see. And finally, I am delighted that finally people are taking the military roads seriously. I started 15 months ago. My predecessors as councillors, and in fact, I think one MP now has actually done remarkably little about it in years. So I'm delighted that he's on board as well now. I'm not quite sure that we need a feasibility study. I've been talking to everybody involved. I have everybody lined up. What we need is to get round a table and start moving. So we need much more money for that. And that does come to my particular concern about the Conservative and EI proposal, which is that there's an awful lot of money going in feasibility studies. Can I just point out that the proposals that we have here aren't feasible, they're practical. I'll leave that with you.
Councillor Stevens, please.
Thank you. I wasn't going to speak actually, only to second the proposal, but thought I should because Councillor Garrett and very, very linked into the budget process, and I can only say that both the Lib Dems and indeed Labour, Jeff for a time, but Jeff himself in and out. I don't know tomorrow. Back into briefly, we've worked well together, and exchanged views, exchanged information, and come through with some very good proposals, both in our motion and indeed amendments. No surprises. There's a couple of things that are a little bit tenuous, as there would be, because don't dictate to the Dems, don't dictate to us, but we have had this actually formed a reasonably good relationship on the budget. No doubt the next full council will have things coming out like there's no tomorrow coming at the cabinet and the administration, but at this moment in time, it's fairly good. What I would like to touch on is Sarah quite rightly spoke very eloquently about the trauma side of relationships, etc. And I think very, very good, and I think it deserves a motion. Community housing, vision of rented accommodation and moving away from temporary bed and breakfast caravans. I think it's a little, you can always knock an administration, but unfortunately, when you knock the administration, you should make exception to the staff who work day in and day out. Nothing falls on deaf ears, as was mentioned earlier. Nothing falls on deaf ears. There's a lot of work done behind the scenes, and there is avenues to go and seek out what is being done, seek out how it's being, seek out why it's being done in certain ways. I would say that our staff, our colleagues in housing, and working hard on temporary accommodation and fixing and supporting financially and emotionally challenging times, need a little bit of consideration. I would just say that we're working on all levels with housing. Come and talk outside the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one more name on my list before we go to the summing up of all of the amendments. And so I'm thinking before I go to the summing up that we will have an adjournment for, I think we ought to comfort break, but not yet. I've got one more person. So I want to get all those from the floor. So it's 3 minutes, Councillor Quack, and then we're having a 5-minute break. Is that okay? Thank you.
In this chamber over 7 years I've been here, you've consistently about the need to deliver, about the need get people out of get them out of caravans, homes. I think it's a terrible shame that the conversation this evening is about political stance, and you can't support it because it's an idea that's come from the Conservatives, rather than actually looking for the benefit of the people of this island. And I find that really disappointing. I also find that there's a lot of duplicitous comments being made. The current administration has pulled down the reserves and has virtually spent the COVID reserve. Now, okay, there were extra costs, but that's gone, and we haven't got. That's not going to be there in the future. So we've got a structural deficit. I've been saying this for the last year in Audit Committee, and everyone's been saying, no, we haven't. I'm glad it's been acknowledged that we have. The structural deficit is set at 1 million, but the confidence level of that is plus or minus 5 million. That's something to be concerned about. So you need to actually start to address how we solve some of those overspends. Things like looking at how we deliver adult social care is a way of delivering better efficiency and starting to control that budget that is going out of control. Bringing children back to the island on very expensive placements. We don't need one. I know there's progress at St. George's, but we need more than one anyway. Of the 39 or whatever it is children off island, probably at least half could come back if the provision was here. And what we keep saying, we need good quality jobs on the island. So we need to be training people up to go into those jobs. We need to be doing things positively. It's not just more of the same. or decline. We need to actually be looking at how we drive things forward. And I find it very disappointing that people can't support that because it's a Conservative idea.
Okay, we're going to take an adjournment. Thank you, Councillor Quirk. Adjournment for 5 minutes. So we're back at 10 past. Thanks very much. think we are ready to proceed with the agenda. Now asking those that have put forward amendments to come back and sum up on their own amendment or any other points made during the debate. So firstly, we have Councillor Jarman or Councillor Mossdale. So if either of those would like to speak. So Councillor Jarman, summing up now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, there was a queue. I do apologise. Is it just okay to wait for Councillor Redrup to come back because there was a queue? No, the other Councillor Redrup, you didn't have to join the queue, clearly because of gender. Is that okay?
We're continuing, I'm afraid, because we are well over our time and we've got a lot to get through.
Okay, fine, no problem at all. So summing up for me, so I'll change it around slightly because I do want Councillor Redrup to be back in the room for part of this. So for me, modular housing to ensure no child is placed in bed and breakfast and accommodation, for me, can be the only way forward. There is no way that it's the right place to actually put a child into bed and breakfast. They can't do their homework. It breaks up a family. Anybody who's looked into ACEs and stuff like that, you know, adverse child experiences, knows that, you know, really you need a roof over your head with access to at least sit at a table and do your homework, and for your family to be able to cook a meal together. Those essential things, and bed and breakfast is not that place to do it. So modular housing for me is just such an excellent way forward. I have to say the amendment by Councillors Brodie and Quigley, we would have supported it. Surprisingly, although I wear bright blue pants apparently, I'm less political than many in this chamber. We would have supported it, but actually we would have liked it to be more specific. To ask the council to look at assets and then find £1 million could take years in my part. If they had said, look at council arts and artefacts and some of the stuff that's held in the council archives that never sees the light of day, we definitely would have been supporting that motion. But for it to actually say that you're going to look at assets that could involve land that we would like to put modular housing on, I find that not able to do so. And with the Lib Dems, I'm a great one for picking up the phone. I'm really surprised that after 7 years as a councillor, I'm not blocked by most people, but actually they still pick the phone up and chat to me. And I did pick up the phone and chatted to Councillor Garrett and said to him, could we work together on a fund for at least some form of crisis fund or some way that we could actually work for people to access that cover these type of items. This is typical of one of those things that if you don't pick up the phone and chat back, then actually we could have worked this through. I really respected what Councillor Redrup said, and I do hope that we can, when we do get to a committee system, that she'll join me, hopefully, if I get on the Adult Social Care Committee, that she comes on as well and we talk to Public Health about ensuring that part of their budget and part of the budget that they use to look after domestic violence services is expanded in the direction that Councillor Redrup would like it to be covered. It is definitely not something that should be ignored. It is definitely something we should be highlighted in. And I think as two vocal women working together, we definitely will be heard. Because we are using the same fund for one of our amendments, then it really would not be possible for us to actually support the Lib Dem amendments. And like I said, you know, for just the sake of a phone conversation, we would have supported that because we do believe in it. But we do believe we've covered some of that stuff in our budget as well. But I do feel with the movement forward with the committee system, if we don't vote for it, of course we can't vote for it because if we vote for your amendment, it means because we're looking at the same fund, then ours won't be able to go through because we'll be using the same money as advised by the monitoring officer, not something I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and made up myself. It does sadden me that in this chamber, there are many that have said this and I will repeat it, that actually from the Conservatives, we are being open and transparent and looking for people to vote for our motions. But to hear that people won't vote for them because we are Conservative, to me is just blinkered. I just don't believe that we would. You know, I would vote for other people's amendments, whatever political party were they from, if I felt they were well structured or also discussed. As I said, Lib Dems, I'm sorry, same fund, can't do it. And lastly, the children's home. You've only got to research children's homes to find out that many children's homes on the mainland are actually run by private equity firms. What does it come to that private equity firms run children's homes? We place our children on the mainland, then we listen to other people's speeches that we shouldn't send adults across the water and separate them from our families. But we think that's acceptable to do to our children. You know, we are all corporate parents in this room. And as such, whether a report has been done before, we should look at this again. And we should look at it properly with a sensible eye to how we keep children on the island being able to have the right type of placements for them. Of course, there are still placements that need to go to the mainland for reasons that have been given by Councillor Brady. But actually, for £30,000 to invest in looking at this again, and Councillor Bacon, thank you. I know reports have been done, but I've always been one to say, well, actually, let's actually look at it again and investigate it further, because there must be a way that we can do this for the right of our children as we are corporate parents. Thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry I went on for a bit longer than I did, but I do think this is really important, and we look for you to support our amendment, even though I know you probably won't.
I now invite Councillor Garrett to sum up for his.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start by agreeing with Councillor Mosdell about the way in which hopefully budget process would proceed if we adopt a committee system. I think the debate tonight has shown that discussion does lead to consideration, and if we do move to that format, then we will be able to find a way, particularly actually, I banged on it about a lot, about bringing indicative savings much more into the open much earlier, so that we can assess exactly how they would be received by island residents, but also how, most importantly, how they would impact island residents. Councillor Brody, you make a very good point, and it's always the issue of, do you consolidate everything into a fund which has an overarching theme to it, or divvy it up into smaller pots? And there are arguments both ways, but I absolutely take on your point that you made about the initiative that Councillor Redrup has put forward. Councillor Jones-Evans has made passionate, as she always does, a passionate contribution about place planning. The Liberal Democrat amendment is not to scupper place planning. It is about the way we would prioritise. I believe place planning can deliver to community capacity, to resilience, by consolidating into a larger fund. It allows us agility and flexibility, but also a greater means by which we can prioritise against those themes, particularly, and I know I've gone on about it so many times, about addressing poverty. Councillor Dorr, absolutely. I've been a chair of a charity dependent upon small and large grants. It always comes with conditions around the governance arrangements, the reporting arrangements, the key performance indicators. It isn't about just giving out money and just leaving it be. You want to know that, and that's right, you want to learn what works, because if it works, you put more money in there. So, and so I really do welcome what Councillor Dorr said from his own experience. Which leaves me with the ICON amendment, the EI Conservative amendment. Sorry, it's an acronym I've kind of slipped into. Trouble is, I've just been around local government too long. I was first a councillor in 1991. You may not believe it, my youthful looks and whatever, but that's and I've just seen feasibility studies come and they go, and it's a great way of looking like you're doing something when you're not. And in the last year of an administration, it's a really good way to bog down a council in spending lots of officer time looking at things which have probably been looked at many times before. We've heard Councillor Bacon's contribution in that regard on one side of things. I just want to see this council doing stuff. One thing I would like to see actually is some analysis of what it really costs to do a feasibility study. I recall the 150,000 that had been set aside for one on the cultural centre. Feasibility studies, if you buy in outside consultants, are not cheap. I don't think £130,000 aggregate punt on feasibility studies is the way that we should be going forward on these things. So I just can't go down that track on that. There are some very good ideas within that amendment, and whatever happens tonight, I hope all of the amendments, the way they have been heard, will go through into the way that we as a collective body of 39 councillors will look at things. In the end, if we do get to a committee system, I think some of that kind of thinking where we're taken away a little bit from the theatre of this chamber. It certainly was my experience on councils under a committee systems that move one step removed from those theatrics, and you've got much more inter-party debate and much more inter-party agreement. Ultimately, I would hope that you would support the Liberal Democrat amendment. If not, our views are out there for you to consider over the coming year. We will certainly be supporting that from Councillors Brodie and Quigley. It makes a valuable contribution to the way of thinking over the final year of this municipal cycle. But unfortunately, I'm afraid I cannot be seduced by Councillor Jarman and Mosdell on this occasion. Thank you.
I invite Councillor Quigley to come back on the
Thank you. Taking Councillor Mosdell's point on minding Councillor Brodie's amendment, I've just checked my phone and I haven't missed a call from you suggesting that we look at the archive or excluding land for council housing. So I would have had to guess, and there was no email either. So I understand the point you're trying to make towards Councillor Garrett. I think it's unfortunate, but like I say, there's no phone call. You'd be surprised. No, I actually quite liked your amendment. No, you're fine. Really are fine. I quite liked your amendment, and I'm not against it just because it's a Conservative Party. There's some things I really liked. That was until I did read the explanation, and then what really put me off was when Councillors Spink, Jarman and Mosdell spoke, because it became apparent this was more sort of a plan you write on the last night of a 2-week holiday when you've had too much sangria and cheese. It leaves more questions than answers, and I'm sorry, but looking at the numbers, it's very ill thought out, so I can't support that. In terms of our amendment, I'd like people to support it. The idea is out there. It's not controversial. It's low cost. If it makes sense for the Cabinet to exclude land that is available for council housing and sell a part of the archive, I certainly won't be upset. I think the important point myself and Councillor Brodie were making is that homes and housing are things that need to be built, not just talked about.
You certainly can. Great.
Yeah, and I think, I think it's only right that I should respond to the remarks regarding the Icon amendment tonight. I did say that if it was just the substance, I might have voted for it. But frankly, I was born in a northern city that was seriously bombed during the Second World War, Sunderland, where, well, nearly all the housing was destroyed. It may have happened in other cities as well, Portsmouth, for instance. And they erected prefabricated houses there that were pretty abominable. They were quite popular with some people, but they were pretty abominable. And they were still there when I was a child in the 60s. And, I mean, that's 20 odd years later or whatever, they were still there. They weren't good homes. And I would much rather see any money we spend on proper, affordable homes, not cheap and cheerful things for people because we're doing good for poor people. I mean, that's why the main reason why I put. Secondly, I represent, as I regularly say, a ward with particular challenges, Pan and Barton. And I cannot, despite, the condemnation from Councillors Quirk and Spink, vote for a motion that says that austerity was necessary. It wasn't, not in my view. It was a political choice by David Cameron and George Osborne and the Conservative Party and your party, Andrew, at the time, the Lib Dems, I'm afraid to say, and I will always remind you of that. And also to talk about, in the final paragraph of their preface, that the government has continued to make sustained and a substantial additional investment into essential services. That is fantasy land, absolute fantasy land of the last 14 years. That is another reason why I will not support this. And that's not purely and simply because they're Conservatives. I get on most of the time with the Conservative group. They're always okay in opposition. It's when they move on to that side of the chamber that they turn a bit odd. But I get on well with them in opposition. But to be frank with you, they've allowed somebody to put text there that they should never have been there. And then they might have had more support for it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And now invite the leader to sum up on the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Well, lots been said. I'll be trying to be quicker than the last. Well, I have to be quick because it's 5 minutes. But In broad principle, I'm certainly going to support Andrew and Richard and Jeff's motion. I'm going to support the Lib Dems motion amendments. I beg your pardon. I'm really struggling with the amendment from the Conservatives and the EI group. Very quickly, Military Road, 250,000. We're doing this. We're doing it. We've been doing it for months. We're talking to the landowners. We're talking to DFT. We're talking to DLUC. We're trying to get the funding. We've got a high level design and costing of the road. We don't need a feasibility study. Forget it. Forget it. We're doing it. 250,000. Where's it coming from? It's coming from the Capital Highways budget. Hey ho. Just a little while ago, I gave some good news to two of our colleagues over there from Shanklin, because we're going to put 500,000, or were, into Shanklin for the Osborne Steps. Guess where the money's coming from? It's coming from the £250,000 that you're suggesting won't be spent on the steps. So just take that into account when it comes to the time, and you'll be asked to support a budget or an amendment. That's what you're voting for. We need to do these things, because we got this wrong before over the council tax credit support scheme. It's all guesswork. It's guesswork. Prefab homes, £19,000. Prefab. I'm not sure why it's described as prefab, because I can tell you where you can buy homes on this island. I'll call them homes for about that money, about £25,000. You know where they are? They're in Puckpool and they're on Colwell Bay. They're called beach huts. They're 8 foot by 6 foot, right? £19,000, £4,000 to shipping. We're buying them from abroad. We've got manufacturers on our island, and we're supposedly bringing in homes. Homes, Jeff was right. It's not a home. £20,000. It's not even a second-hand caravan. What on earth are we doing calling this affordable homes? Our budget proposes real affordable homes for people on this island, and that's what we'll deliver with our budget. Affordable homes, real, £5 million worth of in this coming year. £5 million worth. Affordable, proper homes, not second-hand caravans. And here's the other thing, right? 90. This council has never, ever had more than 50 single people in temporary accommodation. At the current week, it's 40. I get these figures every week. It's 40. You're proposing 90. The figures, Councillor Spink. You're proposing 90. I don't know who they're for, because there are 200 families, which include children, in temporary accommodation. We're going to squeeze families with children into an 8 by 6 temporary second-hand caravan or a beach chalet. Sounds potty to me, absolutely potty. And it's guesswork. It's all guesswork. And finally, feasibility, Councillor Garrett, I mean, we've done some feasibility studies. 130,000, multiply that by 10, and you might be somewhere close. £30,000 for a feasibility study on these. My goodness me. We're guessing again. I'm sorry, but we are guessing. Let's stop trying to run this council by guesswork. Let's have the facts. Let's not have guesswork. Let's not have suggestions that come out of thin air and call things what they're not. It's not affordable homes. It's a caravan for somebody in temporary accommodation. Guess what? We're already doing that. We already rent caravans that we put families in temporary accommodation. We're going to get them.
No comments from the floor, please. It's not your turn to speak. Councillor Spink.
I've 25 seconds. I'll finally say, families in temporary accommodation, they're in caravans. We don't need any more. We want to get them out of caravans and into proper affordable homes, just as Jeff said, not caravans for poor people. Let's do it better. Vote for our budget. Thank you.
Okay, next we are going to Councillor Quigley or Councillor Brody to move the leader to formally recommend the budget and seek a seconder.
I have to, bear with me, I have to formally recommend my budget if I hadn't made it quite clear that I was doing that already this evening. Now is my moment to formally recommend that all of you councillors vote to accept this budget. Thank you.
And I need a seconder, please, for that. Thank you, Councillor Stevens. And now I invite Councillor Quigley or Councillor Brody to formally move their budget amendment to that that proposal.
I would formally like to recommend my amendment to the chairman.
And I formally seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Brody. And now we go to the vote on the amendment to the budget. Yes. This is the buff coloured one. Feels like a bingo again. No, raffles, I don't know. All those, so it's a named vote as well on all those. So the monitoring officer, or acting monitoring officer for tonight, will be going through that list of names. Thank
Deputy
you.
Monitoring Officer,
Deputy.
Chair, thank you. Councillor Andre.
For.
Councillor Bacon.
For.
Councillor Daw.
For.
Councillor Downer. Councillor Fuller.
For.
Councillor Jones-Evans.
For.
Councillor Lever.
For.
Councillor Lucioni.
For.
Councillor PC Wilcox. Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Garrett. Councillor Lilley. Councillor Sarah Redrup.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
For.
Councillor Quigley. For. Councillor Beston.
Against.
Councillor Blake.
Against.
Councillor Brading.
Against.
Councillor Churchman.
Against.
Councillor Drew.
Against.
Councillor Ellis.
Against.
Councillor Hendry.
Against.
Councillor Mosdale.
Against.
Councillor Nicholson.
Against.
Councillor Oliver.
Against.
Councillor Outlaw. Councillor Price. Councillor Quirk.
Against.
Councillor Ray Redrup.
Against.
Councillor Robertson.
Against.
Councillor Ward.
Against.
Councillor Brody.
For.
Councillor Adams. Councillor Jarman. Councillor Medland.
Against.
Councillor Spink.
Come on, sorry, against.
Councillor Jordan.
For.
Councillor Love.
For.
Councillor Christensen.
For. That is 19 for and 20 against, so that amendment falls. And we now move on to the next amendment. So I will invite Councillor Garrett to nominate his, to formally move his.
I thank you, Chair. I formally move the Liberal Democrat Group amendment.
And a seconder, please.
I also formally move.
Councillor Redrup, thank you. And now we will do a named vote on the Lib Dem amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Andre,
4.
Councillor Bacon,
4.
Councillor Daw,
4.
Councillor Downer, Councillor Fuller,
4.
Councillor Jones Evans,
4.
Councillor Lever,
4.
Councillor Lucioni,
With pleasure, 4.
Councillor PC Wilcox, Councillor Stevens,
4.
Councillor Garrett, Councillor Lilley, Councillor Sarah Redrup,
4.
Councillor Stewart,
4.
Councillor Quigley,
Against.
Councillor Beston,
Against.
Councillor Blake,
Against.
Councillor Brading,
Against.
Councillor Churchman,
Against.
Councillor Drew,
Against.
Councillor Ellis,
Against.
Councillor Hendry,
Against.
Councillor Mosdale,
Against.
Councillor Nicholson,
Against.
Councillor Oliver,
Against.
Councillor Outlaw,
Against.
Councillor Price, Councillor Quirk,
Against.
Councillor Ray Redrup,
Against.
Councillor Robertson,
Against.
Councillor Ward,
Against.
Councillor Brodie,
Against.
Councillor Adams, Councillor Jarman, Councillor Medland,
Against.
Councillor Spink,
Against.
Councillor Jordan,
4.
Councillor Love,
4.
Councillor Critchison.
4. We now move, oh no, we'll move to the totals for those. I'm getting ahead of myself. Did it in my head, but I better wait for the. Okay, that is 17 for and 22 against, so that amendment falls and we move on to Councillor Jarman. I invite you or Councillor Mosdale to propose your amendment.
So proposed.
And a seconder? Councillor Mosdale, thank you. We now undertake the named vote on the icon, apparently, proposal. So, Mr. Thorne, thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. Councillor Andre,
Against.
Councillor Bacon,
Against.
Councillor Daw,
Against.
Councillor Downer, Councillor Fuller,
Against.
Councillor Jones Evans,
Against.
Councillor Lever,
Against.
Councillor Lucioni,
Against.
Councillor PC Wilcox, Councillor Stevens,
Against.
Councillor Garrett,
Against.
Councillor Lilley, Councillor Sarah Redrup,
Against.
Councillor Stewart,
Against.
Councillor Quigley,
Against.
Councillor Beston,
4.
Councillor Blake,
4.
Councillor Brading,
4.
Councillor Churchman, Councillor Drew, 4, Councillor Ellis,
4.
Councillor Hendry,
4.
Councillor Mosdale,
4.
Councillor Nicholson, 4, Councillor Oliver,
4.
Councillor Outlaw, Councillor Price, Councillor Quirk,
4.
Councillor Ray Redrup,
4.
Councillor Robertson,
4.
Councillor Ward,
4.
Councillor Brodie,
Against.
Councillor Adams, Councillor Jarman,
4.
Councillor Medland,
4.
Councillor Spink,
4.
Councillor Jordan,
Against.
Councillor Love,
Against.
Councillor Critchison.
Against. That was 20 votes for and 19 votes against. So that motion becomes part of the substantive motion, so that amendment is part of the now entire the budget that was proposed. So we now, let me just check the one last time. Yes, so we are now voting on the substantive motion of the original budget plus the amendment. And that's another named vote. So over to you, Mr. Thorne. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Andre,
For.
Councillor Bacon.
For.
Councillor Dorr,
4.
Councillor Downer, Councillor Fuller,
For.
Councillor Jones Evans,
For.
Councillor Lever,
For.
Councillor Lucioni,
For.
Councillor PC Wilcox, Councillor Stevens,
For.
Councillor Garrett, Councillor Lilley, Councillor Sarah Redrup,
Against.
Councillor Stewart,
Against.
Councillor Quigley,
Against.
Councillor Beston,
For.
Councillor Blake, Councillor Brading,
For.
Councillor Churchman,
For.
Councillor Drew, Councillor Ellis,
For.
Councillor Hendry,
For.
Councillor Mosdale,
For.
Councillor Nicholson,
For.
Councillor Oliver,
For.
Councillor Outlaw, Councillor Price, Councillor Quirk,
For.
Councillor Ray Redrup,
For.
Councillor Robertson,
4.
Councillor Ward,
4.
Councillor Brodie,
Against.
Councillor Adams, Councillor Jarman, Councillor Medland, 4. Councillor Spink, 4. Councillor Jordan, 4. Councillor Love,
Against.
Councillor Pritchardson.
I'll abstain. Thank you. The results are 34, 0 for it, and 8 against and 1 abstention. So that is carried. That budget is passed. Thank you for your time on that item. We're now moving on to item 8. We've got a few that we must get through in the time. We have got the extra time we have tonight, but do not want to take any longer than we need to. So we now have a report of the Deputy Monitoring Officer about the appointment of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Mr. Thorne, please.
Chairman, thank you. Members will be aware there's a statutory requirement to have a independent remuneration panel and to provide advice on the member allowance scheme. That panel must consist of 3 members. Following the resignation is becoming quorate. We've advertised and interviewed a Dr. Angela Wright, who is considered very suitable and on that basis is recommended for appointment for a 3-year term. Chairman, I wonder if I could ask if you could move the recommendation at page 161, para 3.
Yes, I will. Yep, I put that proposal forward and I look for a seconder for that, please. Councillor Stewart, thank you. Would anyone wish to comment on that? Or are we happy to go to a vote on that? All those for that proposal, please. Thank you. Is there anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you very much. And then we move on to item B of that, which is the appointment of a local pension board member. So back to Mr. Thorne, if you could just comment on this. Thank you.
Very quickly, Chairman. We've carried a vacancy on the local pensions board for a while. Councillor Fuller has kindly put himself forward as a nomination to sit on the panel as the required elected member. It's before you, Chairman, and again, I ask if you could move the recommendation at para 4 on page 165.
Yep, I do. I propose that Councillor Fuller takes that position and put that forward. So I ask for a seconder for that as well, please. Thank you, Councillor Brady. Does anyone have any comments on that? Councillor Jarman?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor Paul Fuller with the greatest of esteem for stepping forward and taking on this role. It's a valuable role, a necessary role, and it certainly helps us in terms of our position, which has been a long and outstanding vacancy. So I'd like to offer my sincere thanks to him. Thank you, Paul.
Councillor Brady.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Councillor Fuller for his work on the pension fund committee. He's an active member of the committee, takes his responsibilities very seriously. It's not everyone's cup of tea sitting on the pension committee. Equally, he recognised there's a need for the board because no councillor has filled that role since Councillor Lilley walked away from it. So I'm grateful to Councillor Fuller for putting his name forward. I just hope the Alliance find a suitable replacement to fill that important role on the committee going forward, because it's committee's under a lot of pressure at the moment. So we do need another active member to replace Councillor Fuller through a very important and very difficult times at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you very much for the kind words. I think it's important that we do fill this board. It has been vacant for a very long time, and if it is filled, then the council could get into trouble. My biggest regret, though, is that I have to come off the Isle of Wight Council's pensions fund committee, and I'm going to miss my time on there. But I will look forward to perhaps sort of like coming in and observing your work, and look forward to this. Should my nomination be accepted this evening? I don't want to take anything for granted.
Maybe that at some point someone from else in the chamber will take on that position, so you could go back on the committee. You know, I propose that we move to the vote on that if we are happy for Councillor Fuller to take that position. So all those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Oh, that's carried. Thank you very much. Now on to item 9, the report of the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance, the discretionary rate relief policy. Thank you. Is that Councillor Stevens?
It is indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Agenda item 9A, executive summary says it all really, but I will read it out for those on screen. This report recommends changes to the Council's non-domestic rating discretionary rate relief policy, the DRR, in line with the changes made by the Non-Domestic Rating Act of 2023. The Non-Domestic Rating Act 2023 makes changes to provisions of Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act of 1988 in terms of the effective start date of any relief, and changes to the notices and period of notice to be given to ratepayers who receive discretionary relief. As this is a change to the non-domestic rating discretionary rate relief provisions, the Council is required to determine its approach to granting relief with effect from the 1st of April 2024. This paper addresses the need for the Council to determine its approach to the backdating of discretionary rate reliefs. So it's not penalising, it's actually backdating. What I would say is there's a list of recommendations on page 169, and I will read those out for the benefit of those at home. Recommendations: that Cabinet recommends that full Council adopts options 1 and 4 within this report, namely that option 1, backdating provisions which mirror the current legislative backdating rules, are adopted. Within the discretionary rate relief policy, awards will be considered from the date the application is received. In exceptional circumstances, consideration may be given to awarding rate relief for a retrospective period where the ratepayer can demonstrate good cause for not submitting the application earlier, subject to the following constraints relating to the discretionary awards. 1. If the application is received by the 30th of September, the award can be backdated to the 1st of April of the previous financial year. 2. If the application is received after the 30th of September, the award can only be backdated to April of the current financial year. And 3, that relief can be amended or ceased by the Council any such time determined on a daily basis as the council considers that the ratepayer no longer meets the criteria for receiving the relief. And option 4 is also included in the recommendation, that any future changes required to the discretionary rate relief policy are passed for the delegated decision to the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Housing and Finance and the Section 151 officer in conjunction with the monitoring officer, if appropriate. There's quite a few appendices involved there, but it's quite it clarifies the situation quite considerably. What I would say is that this is just an addition to what we've already got in place, which allows for a backdating and claim of relief if required, and during the dates as dictated on the recommendation. So, with that in mind, I'd just like to say that moving swiftly on, I'd like to ask for a seconder and ask for any discussion, debate, questions.
We have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Lilley, would you like to speak on that as well, Councillor Lilley? No. Anyone else like to comment on that proposal? No, we are moving to the vote. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? No, that's carried. Thank you. Next, it's what item am I on now? Item 10, the report of the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education, Corporate Functions. It's the pay policy. So, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the pay policy is updated on an annual basis to reflect any changes in pay and condition of council staff and to meet the requirements of Section 38 of the Localism Act, which requires local authorities to publish a statement and which must be, as you said, it's time sensitive. It must be adopted by full council by the 31st of March each year. The policy attached to the paper sets out the council's approach to the pay of its workforce for the year 1st of April 24 to 31st of March 25. The updates that are in this policy are listed in paragraph 2, and I think it's fair to say that they are minor, as quoted elsewhere in the report. And very simply, overall, it's a well-established policy which has been reviewed and refreshed in line with legislative requirements, and that happens on an annual basis to ensure it remains fit for purpose and necessarily updated. As paragraph 25 says, it provides a solid and transparent framework through which the council can undertake its decision-making with regards to the pay and remuneration of its staff. And therefore, the recommendation appearing at the end of paragraph 2 is that full council approve the updated pay policy as drafted for the period 1st of April 24 to 31st of March 25. And I'd look for a seconder.
Seconder for that, please. Councillor Ellis, thank you. Would you like to speak on that at all? No. Anyone else like to comment? Councillor Brodie and then Councillor Jarman and Councillor Quigley. Councillor Brodie first, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll have another attempt at pointing out an inconsistency here, hopefully a bit more successfully than the last time. In the budget that you've all just agreed, in the indicative savings, there is an item called reviewing the market supplement for approved mental health practitioners with the intention to save, I think it was £62,000. Yet within the pay policy on page 227, there is a proposal to increase the market supplement to the approved mental health practitioners. Can I understand entirely which it is now? Thank you.
Would you like to come back on that, Councillor Bacon?
I think I might need some assistance from the Section 151 officer on that. Okay. I'm not sure where we stand in light of that point.
I could take some other comments in between if you'd like to speak, Councillor Jarman. If you've got a separate issue.
Thank Councillor Brodie for identifying one of the inconsistencies that I picked up on. If I could also refer to the first paragraph of, first bullet point of item 2 on it, I wondered why it was that the pay increases are at 3.88%, but the premium payments are only at 3.8. Is that a technical error or what? Given the previous issue, I'll assume that that will be dealt with in the same conversation.
Yes, I will ask that it's dealt with. Is there any other points? Was that?
I think we have 2 running at the same time. It's probably enough, isn't it, at one go?
Chair, if it helps, I'm happy to have an explanation outside of this. It's probably, I mean, I can understand, but there is a contradiction here. And that's the second time tonight. I mean, I didn't get a satisfactory explanation on the one earlier on, which is why I didn't vote for the premium on second homes, which I wanted to. And I mean, I'm not going to get one easily tonight, am I? Let's face it. It's in the pit unless if you are, great. All right.
I've just had the benefit of a word in the ear. I'm sorry, I did not hear what Councillor Jarman was saying as a result of that. So apologies if we need to review of that. But the explanation is that the budget is taking out the allowances where they do not apply. The policy is increasing the allowances where they do apply. Now, if that's deemed not sufficiently clear in the paper, that might be a second issue, but that is the explanation.
Chair, I mean, from my long memory, yeah, when I had something to do with social services on this council, approved mental health practitioners they're approved for the role. Are you saying we're getting rid of approved mental health practitioners? You're not. So how are you going to save £62,000? This is the problem. I mean, it's the sort of question you would ask in a budget debate if you had more than 3 minutes. But you know, it's I would probably be on an hour if I had longer, which probably would drive people out of the chamber.
As I say, essentially the approach is taking out the anomalies. So where the allowances do not apply, that is where the budget bites. But the policy relates to where those allowances continue.
I think we can give extra information on that outside of this meeting, perhaps, Councillor Brodie. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Councillor Jarman, would you like to repeat your comment, please? Thank you.
I would, but if I could respectfully ask that whatever the reply is to resolve that anomaly, that it's circulated to all members, not just to Councillor Brodie, who I
No,
appreciate.
I did intend for it to be for everybody.
Thank you. Yes, so the other question is, given that there's an increase of 3.88%, which is noted on the first page, item 2, various bullet points,